Hi, my name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED, and this is Q5 Worldwide Ham Radio. Today I'm joined by Fred Last, K2TR. If you're an old-timer in the hobby, you may remember hearing him called King Fred, a nod to the respect he earned early on and has carried ever since. From his novice days in the 1960s to his professional work in broadcast engineering, Fred has always had a knack for tackling RF challenges head-on. Fred is very well known for his antenna designs and presentations that still draw big crowds at HamX and the Dayton Hamvention, and just as much for the camaraderie of multi-op contesting, where he's been a steady presence on the bands for years. A longtime YCCC member, Fred has seen the club through its earliest days and into its place at the center of Northeast contesting. But before we begin, thanks to ICOM for powering Q5 Worldwide Ham Radio. Whatever your corner of the hobby, there's an ICOM built for you. Welcome to the show, Fred.
Thank you, Kevin.
So I have to begin with King Fred. The only reason I know that is I read this long story about how YCCC was formed, this merger, and I can't remember who the ham was who wrote it, but he referenced reaching out to you as being one of the power people in the existing club. It might have been Murphy's Marauders, and he knew if you could convince you that you may be a voice. But anyway, in that paragraph, he referred to you as King Fred. Tell me about that.
It's kind of a story that doesn't make any sense, but at one point there was somebody on 75 meters that decided he was going to call himself the president. So I said, all right, if you're going to be the president, I'm going to be the king.
And it stuck.
It stuck. And that person that said that or wrote that was probably Jeff Briggs, I would guess.
I love it when you name names. That's really good. So, Fred, you've obviously got a long history in ham radio, but I want to start at the beginning. What ever got you interested in this hobby in the first place?
Well, I grew up in Niagara Falls, big family, not a lot of money, and not a lot of chance to travel around and meet people. So I thought, hey, this is kind of cool. I can do some technical stuff and meet people and visit people all at the same time. So I got my license. I started talking on 2-meter AM back in the days with a tour, and then built my own rig for 2 meters and started a little bit in VHF contest. And when I went to school at RPI, I kind of mushroomed out into low band contesting.
So when you got your ham radio license, did you already have a sense that that's what you wanted to do for a career, electrical engineering?
Yeah, I did. That's true.
So it was a good overlap then.
Yeah, it was a great overlap. And, I don't know if now's the time to get into it or not, but, as I was going through, ham radio, I ended up teaching myself electronics. And by the time I went to RPI, which was a great engineering school, especially for EE and especially for RF, I found that I knew quite a bit already that I had taught myself. So it was an interesting traveling through college and learning a little bit more. But what I did learn in college was really, really cool. It really helped my career in the long run, and that was learning mechanical design. Not that I was good at mechanical design. I did pass the course, but at the time I was thinking, wait, they're teaching me how to build bridges. But at the time I never knew I was going to get into broadcasting. And when I did get into broadcasting, I was able to do some really, really cool things with TV towers because I understood mechanics. Well, the situation was in 1970s, late 70s, when I became a chief engineer, my boss said to me, we're on a different mountain than everybody else, and people who are trying to receive us are having troubles because the antennas are pointed in the wrong direction, and there's this new antenna out that the FCC is allowing called circular polarization. And can you get that for us? And I said, yeah, sure, I can figure out how to do that. So I looked at the situation, and it was so far there had been 12 other stations in the United States that had switched to circular polarization. So I would have been number 13 if I did it, and every single one of those had put up a brand new tower. Now, a brand new tower, you're looking at a better part of $1 million in order to do a reasonably tall one. Our tower at the time was 765 feet. So I figured out how to put a tower or an antenna on the top of our tower, and it was twice as wide, which meant that it had higher wind load, but I figured out how to do it at half the height. Well, when you do twice the width and half the height. The overturn moment is the same. The shear is roughly the same. So you can put that on the existing tower, and what would have been over $1 million project became a $285,000 project. And it worked very well, and I learned an awful lot in the process, not only about antenna design, but circular polarization and the uniqueness of vertical versus horizontal and how the two of them interact in ways that a lot of people still don't understand.
I hope you got a huge bonus for that huge savings.
I got to keep my job.
I'm also intrigued by the fact that I just got back, as you know, from Hamex down in Marlborough, Massachusetts, and Tim Duffy spoke at the dinner, and his first job was chief engineer for a broadcasting station. So you guys share that similarity.
Well, there was something else in between there because after RPI, I went to work for Sylvania where we were making helicopter radios. And at the time, this was still in the 60s, I learned solid-state power amplifiers, I learned synthesizers, I learned the surface mount components and how to solder at surface mount. So there was a lot of background in between there. And toward the end of the Vietnam War, they were closing down the factory. So I says, do I want to work in defense electronics? And at the time, everyone was kind of down on the government for Vietnam and all of the implications of fighting in Vietnam. So I looked elsewhere other than defense electronics and landed in broadcasting, and I loved it.
So I want to take you back to RPI just for a second. You said that ham radio kind of gave you a head start, so you must have had some additional time. Did you use that time to get on the air?
Oh gosh, let's see here. I would obviously operate from W2SZ whenever I could, sweepstakes and the DX contests. And, then from there I ended up joining Murphy's Marauders. And even though it was a little bit of a distance down to Hartford, I was one of the first people to join Murphy's Marauders that were not actually located in New England. Then, one thing led to another, and that ultimately became the Yankee Clipper Contest Club, which is probably the best group of people I've ever been associated with.
So let's talk more about that. YCCC has this incredible reputation, not just nationwide, actually, internationally. You started with the Murphy's Marauders. Tell me more about that progression. I mean, I did read the recap, as I mentioned, about it seemed like it was a merger of groups. What was going on then?
Well, it was interesting because you can look at it from multiple standpoints. But I'll just tell you what my standpoint of it was, is that Murphy's Marauders was probably one of the most creative clubs in the country when it comes to operating contests. They also had the advantage of being in the Northeast, which is a fantastic place for working Europe and running up great contest scores. But at the same time, they wanted to get a higher score and a higher score and a higher score, and they aspired to beat PVRC. And in order to beat PVRC, they were going to have to be a bigger club. But at the same time, there were a lot of people within Murphy's Marauders at the time that says, wait, we like our group just the way it is. It's a nice, tight-knit group. We don't need to grow. So they were kind of pulling themselves apart, deciding which way to go. And the right way to go is to just form a new club and move on from there. So that's how Yankee Clipper started.
So I want to talk about your operating style as a contester. Obviously, you've been contesting for decades. When I look back through 3830, it looked like the majority of your contesting the last, say, 10 years has been multi-op. Has that always been the case?
Pretty much. There were some times when I've done single op. I mean, back in the 70s, I used to try to win sweepstakes from the Northeast, and I was doing that single op. I've done a few multi-ops from the Northeast as well, but at one point, one year I got fourth, one year I got fifth, and I finally says, you know what, I can't win from the Northeast. And in 1979, I ended up going down to the Caribbean, and I operated from John Ackley's KP2A in CW contest sweepstakes, and from Pedro's NP4A, and I actually used KP4Q, his old call, back in the sweepstakes phone. I ended up winning both of those. So it's a feather in my cap that I can operate single op, but I enjoy the multi-op because of the camaraderie and the fact that I can get a little bit of sleep at night.
Well, tell me more about that, because I do hear this from a lot of people, particularly after they've been doing single op for a while, including people like Chris, KL9A. He definitely seems to move toward enjoying multi-op a lot more. What's your experience been beyond just the camaraderie?
I find that the real competition of hardware happens in the multi-op category.
Interesting.
And my mind tends to go toward strategy and hardware put together, and that's station design in hardware and antennas. And for the longest time, I'm trying to understand the mystery of antennas. And there's no book that tells you the mystery of antennas. You got to figure it out for yourself. So uh, the multi-op contesting is a great way to kind of say, how does this antenna work against the competition? When does the competition do better? When do I do better? What heights do they have? What height antennas do I have? And I learned propagation and antennas together because the two of them go hand in hand.
So, Fred, take that a little bit deeper. Maybe give us an assessment of some of the more well-known multi-op contest stations around the world.
Well, the one I got involved with was Jim Lawson, W2PV. Jim was a very, very talented physicist and mathematician and manager. He ultimately was a vice president of research and development at General Electric, right in Schenectady. I was living in Troy at the time. Dave Donnelly, K2SS, that was WB2SQN at the time, says, Fred, I'm doing some work over there. Jim wants to do a multi-op. Why don't you come on over and give it a try? And from Jim's, you would end up knowing, the K2GL station, Buzz Reeves down in Tuxedo Park on top of a hill, very nice hill. They used N2AA for Gene Walsh's call for much of the contesting. W3LPL, Frank Donovan. W3AU used to be W3MSK, W4BVV. I mean, these were the biggies at that point. They're all located on the East Coast. And I tended to focus on 20 meters. And I figured out that in the Northeast, we can work Europe in the afternoon when the band is dead in Maryland. And I would, if the sunspots were high and I was making 40 QSOs an hour, I just kept my nose to the grindstone. And by the time a few hours have gone by, I'd passed the people in Maryland that had beaten me early on in the opening.
So what's your assessment of some of the newcomers like K1LZ in Maine?
K1LZ is, it's a hardware contest for him, and he's pulled in so many different directions by so many different ideas, and sometimes what he does is groundbreaking, and sometimes he shoots himself in the foot because his towers are so close together. He gets some interstation interference that he shouldn't have.
So, in looking through 3830 again, it doesn't seem as though you have one go-to multi-op. You've obviously been to Tim's K3LR. How do you choose where you're going to end up for a contest?
Well, it's kind of first come, first serve. I'm trying to figure that out myself. It's a difficult situation. I will tell you that I really enjoyed operating at Tim's. The people there are top notch. Tim is a fantastic host. So if he asks me again, probably would be my first choice. But at the same time, planning a trip to Andamans in October of 26.
So I'd like to talk about your presentation that you made at HAMX. I was lucky enough to be in the room while you were discussing your antenna setup. Could you just give the audience an overview? I don't expect you to go into tremendous detail, but give us an overview of what you have at your home QTH.
Well, at the moment, I'm living in a condo, but when I did have my own station, I had three towers, 110, 120, and 140 feet. And on 160, I had an inverted V at 135 feet. On 80 meters, I had an inverted V at 80 feet, and I had a four-element delta loop strung between two towers. The top's at about 120 feet. Two towers were 260 foot apart, and it was switchable northeast and southwest. And it was excellent on both the DX contest running Europe. It was also perfect for a sweepstakes. But one of the cool things that really happened to me at the time is that I'm working 75 meters in a CQ Worldwide contest in disturbed conditions, and I'm beaming southwest, and I'm tuning around, and I hear a JA station at S9, and I've never heard a JA station at S9 on 80 meters before. And he had no echo on him whatsoever. And here I am beaming southwest, so I'm working him, or I'm talking to, or hearing him skew path. I go to 3807, call CQ. He comes right back to me. He was talking to someone else. Then I called CQ. Another JA called me. I called CQ, and then there was a station calling me with an accent that I didn't recognize. And I finally pulled him out. It was a UA9, zone 19. Called CQ again, another UA9. Called CQ again, DU9RG calls me. So I got I got three double mults in the log in about 5 minutes in an unusual opening, and there's people tapping me on the shoulder and says, there's a packet spot on Guam. You should go get that. And I was calling CQ because I wanted to find out if anybody else was going to call me. And when nobody did, I went and worked Guam. So I got four double mults in like 5 minutes.
So you strike me as somebody who is so technically aware, you're probably never satisfied.
Yeah, I'm always looking for the next thing. But let's go back to the rest of the contest thing. On 40 meters, I had 3/3. Um, and at one time, I had 2/2, but they were Wilson antennas modified to have the correct uh, element lengths. And I also had an inverted V. So I did really well in sweepstakes and a DX contest. On 20 meters, I had 4/4 fixed south, and I had 5/5 and or 6/6 on 20 meters at the optimum height, 55 feet and 110. So I could do very well on 20. 15 meters, I had 4/4 fixed on Europe and a 7-element rotatable, upper lower both switching. And on 10 meters, I had 4/4, either fixed south or fixed Europe, depending on what part of the sunspot cycle it was. I had a 6-element side mount at 105 feet, and I had another 6-element beam at 145 feet above my 40-meter antenna. And it was kind of cool because it was built before YT program came out, and when YT came out, I obviously had to run all my antennas and see if there was anything I could do. And my only weakness, which I already knew about, was the opening on 15 meters. I could have been a little bit better. I lost a little bit of the opening for the first 10, 15 minutes to the people in New England, partly because they were closer to Europe and partly because some of them had some slope down toward Europe, which I did not have. And because I kind of wanted to control the ground gain on 20 meters in the afternoon. So it did reasonably well with that. But I went as far as I could, and as much as I could. I learned everything I needed to do. But and now it's trying to get that knowledge to as many other people as possible.
So why do you think that your presentations about wire antennas is so popular year over year?
That has actually struck me by surprise. The the idea of wideband antennas is something that I've been thinking about for a long time. I've been doing some of those designs just kind of in the back room for years, and they were just sitting on my computer, and I'm trying to figure out what do I do with this. And back in December of last year, Curtis Rose said to me, "Fred, can you throw together a little presentation for the Hudson Valley Club?" And you know, by the way, we need it on Monday. So that the beginning of that program was put together in 4 days. Most of it was on New Year's Day this year, and it was kind of a hit, and I was surprised by that. And it was presented it to the Albany Radio Club, so I had a chance to reproduce it again. And when Tim Duffy, I sent it to him, and he says, "Oh, I was figuring he'd like it for Contest University." And he says, "No, no, 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 not Contest for University, the forum itself." Okay, I can do that. Uh, and interestingly enough, Jim Lawson and I co-presented something in Dayton about antennas 50 years ago. So it was kind of reliving the past for me. And when I did it, I felt very comfortable. It came out very well. I made a few flubs, but by and large, when I found out that they were posting it on their YouTube channel, and the number of responses for it was higher than anybody else's at the Hamvention, I was just blown away by it.
So for the audience, could you summarize a little bit more about what's in that presentation, just to whet people's appetite to go look for it?
Okay, sure. It basically talks about it starts with how to match an antenna so that no matter how high it is, you can get a minimum SWR at the bottom of whatever frequency you want. Because the problem is if you end up with an antenna at the wrong height, you can't match it to 50 ohms no matter what you do with 50 ohm coax. You've got to use something else in order to get it there. Some kind of a matching network somehow. So I just came up with some unique ideas how to offset feed an antenna and make it 50 ohms. Then from there, I started going into ways to make the antenna itself more broadband, and it ends up on 80 meters where I can get an antenna that works on phone and CW with the SWR never higher than 1.3 to 1. And then I took that into verticals, and nobody has ever played with trying to wideband a vertical before. A vertical is pretty broadband to start with, better than a dipole, but I can get a vertical on 80 meters under 1.25 to 1 across the entire band.
So, Fred, it strikes me that you must be lying awake at night. You wake up in the morning and start sketching on a napkin. Is that, I mean, are you constantly thinking about this?
I am constantly thinking about it, and I don't use napkins very often. I usually go straight to Easy Neck, and my Easy Neck folder keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's harder and harder and harder to find something later on. But that's
So I'm
you're
curious.
right. It's just not the back of a napkin. It's just not that.
So I'm curious with your experience and your brain, if you were to have 5 acres tomorrow, how would you use that?
If I were in that position, I would come up with a station layout uh, where two people can operate the same band without the other knowing that the first one is there. And you have to do that by nulling the antennas and locating them in the right way. And there's some things that have never been done. And I've talked to some people about it, and they look at me cross-eyed. And basically, if you took two antennas, instead of stacking them one and up above another, like is typically done, you can stack them one above another, but then offset by a half a wavelength. And now you have an extremely deep null off the end of that antenna, deeper than you typically get off the ends of a typical antenna. And if you had two towers, no, maybe 700, 800 feet apart. And you did that on a second tower in the right direction, so that when you're aiming at Europe in both directions, both of them would have nulls toward each other. The separation between those antennas can approach 100 dB. And when you start putting that together, then creates challenges with the antenna switching system, because most antenna switching systems don't have 100 dB of isolation in them. So you have to treat them as two separate stations without them being in the same matrix. And then getting signals back and forth between a main station and that starts becoming problematic. So you can start running maybe just a drive power over and put an amplifier remote, or you can actually remote the second station over your own local area network instead of running it over the internet like other people do. So the essence of what I would do is try to create a situation that nobody else has done yet, which is the ability to do in-band and partner operation from a single location with more flexibility and performance than anybody ever has put together yet.
So let's get back to operating. Where do you see contesting going from here?
That's a very interesting question, and I ask myself that quite often, because I would like to know, where contesting is going to be, in 5 to 10 years. I know I see the old timers passing away, losing interest, losing energy, not don't have the stamina that they used to, and then the way that some people are working on bringing new people into the contest group, and Tim Duffy has done that very well. I worked with Katie Campbell on 80 meters with her in the CQ WPX contest. A nice young operator coming along very well. Advantage of having a woman's voice, doesn't hurt at all. And then in VU4, when we go there, we're going to make sure that we get some youth operations. Some of VU4 will be remote. Some of them will be local. There'll be like 18 people on the island, and we're also making sure that we can fill up the seats and but in share as much as possible by using some remote operators. And one of those remote operators will be actually a fellow from Africa, from Malawi, uh, and he's a youth. He's very, very, very smart. Been accepted to a school in I think Virginia Tech. So his name is Urgent, and he'll be operating remotely. But operating remotely from India is interesting. We can do it legally, but you need to have an official India license. You can't do a reciprocal license, and in order to get a real license in India, you actually have to get a VU call, and you have to actually get a visa in order to go there in order to qualify for the call. So it's a very, very interesting process we're going to go through. And VU4 is going to be interesting. It's a challenge for me because most of the uh, operating on there is going to be trying to fill up the log with USA stations, but US is over the pole, and we're not necessarily going to be in the best part of the sunspot cycle. We're going to be in good part of the sunspot cycle, but not the best. So I'm trying to figure out: are we going to be able to do long path, short path, and how do we deal with the fact that Europe is probably going to be 40 dB louder than the USA? So it creates some very, very interesting challenges that I'm trying to work my way through, is to try to figure out how to be loud in the United States, even while Europe is so much louder, and at the same time be able to hear the people from the United States while Europe is calling.
So, Fred, are you designing the antenna system or has it already been developed?
It's an iterative process. There is one that's been developed, and I've been asked to head up a committee to implement it. And I'm looking at what changes are possible and what we can do in order to improve the situation. One of the things I looked at is and says, okay, we've got to do hex beams because of their portability and their ease to get up there. I mean, we can't ship towers uh, to Andaman. It's just not practical. So we got to make the best we can with this, and triplexers come into play. That's a new concept for the many of the people that I'm working with in this group. Very, very, very talented, very smart people, but don't have the background that I have when it comes to putting things together and switching systems and working the contests. They're great DXers, and they're coming along with contesting. One of the things I realized is that if you took two hex beams and put them 43 feet apart and aimed them both over the pole, they would create a null toward Europe, so you can be a couple dB louder in the United States, and you hear United States probably 30 dB better than you would otherwise. How exactly whether we're going to do that and how we're going to do that is what I'm trying to figure out.
So at this point, it's all hex beams on masts.
Correct. For the high band.
No verticals.
Oh, there'll be verticals as well. The problem with verticals is that the beach where we are does not face either the United States or Europe. It goes to the southwest. So we will have pendant antennas and verticals, and we'll try to get them as close to the water as we can. But they're going to be more effective for working Africa and South America and skew path to the United States. And we just don't know what the conditions are going to bring us. But skew path is a very, very cool mode that it's a lot of fun with when it happens.
So it sounds like logistically this is a difficult trip also, the other side of the world. How much time are you setting aside for this?
Uh, well, the operation is going to be 3 weeks, but between now and the time we leave, we've got to basically get everything ready to ship there by August of 26. Get it there sometime in October, and set it up and get on the air as much as possible. Before the contest starts, we'll be doing DX mode for about 2 weeks, then the switch to the contest. Going to be kind of cool because the antenna switching an optimum array for DXpedition, and the optimum way to set up the antenna switching for contest is 100% diametrically opposed to each other. During the contest, you want every 20-meter antenna to be available to the 20-meter operator. And in DX mode, you might want to be able to work sideband, CW, and FT8 on a single band all simultaneously. So those are two very, very different challenges.
Fred, clearly you're the first call people should make before planning a DXpedition.
Well, I haven't been on a DXpedition in a big one in a while. Actually, I did go down to HQ9X last October, but Rudy had set that up already, and I really didn't have to do much. I just built one of my 40-meter bow tie antennas and put it up, and that's the only antenna we worked with from Honduras, from HQ9. We did have a vertical, quarter wave vertical, elevated radials, but it was never better than the bow tie antenna.
So Fred, I want to take you back to this idea of where contesting is going to go and ask you specifically, where do you think remote ham radio fits into all this?
Remote radio allows a lot of countries to be active that would not otherwise be active because of the logistics and the cost of travel. So I think it's a really, really great way of making it more fun for everybody, be it the remote operators or the people that are home. So I really am enthused with the remote operation, and we're going to include some remote operation from VU4, but there is that licensing challenge that I mentioned before that we will we'll go through all of the legal steps necessary in order to make that a successful operation.
And what about technically? Have we overcome all the technical challenges involved with remote?
I think so. Probably the one sticking point is push to talk versus Vox is still a little clunky on remote, but that's the only limitation I see.
Do you have a solution for that?
There would be an external box that created a Vox PTT locally to the operator and sent the Vox over the internet to the PTT over the internet to the other side.
Again, not surprised you have an answer.
Well, I even know how to implement it. I found a Vox chip that's made by a company in Japan. It's it's $1 or so, but somebody has to make an external box that would actually do it, and that's not what I'm interested in doing right now.
Well, Fred, I really enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate you taking time to talk to me today.
Oh, you're very welcome, Kevin. Let's do it again soon.
My name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED. This is Q5 Ham Radio. Look for Fred Last, K2TR at Andaman Islands next year, and I'm sure he'll be on CQ Worldwide coming up soon. 73.
73.